got my eye on you. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren and today we are doing every book I have read so far this year. It doesn't look like a lot, but it feels like a lot. I think it's, let me check. Okay, so far I've read 45 books and I am 11 books ahead of my schedule for my Goodreads challenge. This year I wanted to read 75 books. Last year I read 100, like exactly 100, and it was so stressful trying to reach my goal. So this year I thought I would like tone it back a little bit, and then if I pass that goal, that's great. But I don't want to like, you know, push myself too hard and then get in a reading slump. So these are all 45 books and I'm just gonna go through each of them and say whether I recommend them or not, and then maybe like a little bit about them. Okay, so I'm gonna go through these in the order that I read them. So I'm gonna flip all the stacks over. It might not make sense to you guys, but it makes sense in my head because like the first book I ever read is at the bottom of this stack. So if I flip it, it'll be at the top. Oh my gosh, these are all gonna fall. Oh my gosh, it's like having a bookshelf on my bed. Okay, that was such a weird way of doing it, but let me show you guys this. I don't know why, but this is so funny to me. So these are all the books I've read. Okay, I have my Goodreads up and now we're gonna go through all the books. So the very first book I read in 2023 was Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is about a woman named Hannah. I'm gonna try and give super quick synopses of each book. So this is about a woman named Hannah and the book follows two different plot lines. So she's out one night and then if she makes one decision, the book follows that plot line, and then if she makes another decision, it also follows that plot line. So each chapter alternates like what could have happened if she made a different decision. This book I gave a 4 stars, and I think if I were to re-rate it, I would do it like a little bit lower. I wasn't super invested and it was a little boring, but it was still super good and I love Taylor Jenkins Reid, so I have to recommend it because it's Taylor Jenkins Reid. Come on. Also, sorry if you can hear the bath going. My boyfriend is giving Ghost a bath right now. The next book I read is Tell Me Lies by Carola Lovering. Again, if I were to re-rate this, I would give it lower. I gave it a 4 stars. It's definitely like a 2.5. I don't think I recommend this book. It is super toxic romance. It's about Lucy and she is in college and she's far from home and she meets a guy and this guy has a girlfriend half the time. I don't love it. I would say maybe skip the book and watch the Hulu series. I haven't watched the show yet. I've watched like 2 episodes and then I never finished it, but I do want to finish it, but it was just hard to get through. The font is also super tiny. I don't know if you can tell, but the font was so small and this book put me in a slump. So I would say skip this one. Next, I read Finlay Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead by Ella Cosimano. This is the second book in a series. I gave this book 4.75 stars and I would definitely keep that. I love this series so much. I've only read 2 books. The third one is out, but it's only out in hardcover and I own the first and second in paperback. So I'm waiting for it to come out in paperback, but it's so good. The series is about Finlay, who's a single mom with 2 kids and she's barely making ends meet. She's an author and she's talking to her agent about a book idea that she has, which is like a murder mystery, and someone overhears her and thinks that she is a hitman who can be hired. So that's kind of how the book goes, or at least the first one. This one kind of piggybacks off of that story and it was just so good and it's so fun. If you've ever read Dial A for Aunties, this is like the same vibe, like a very cozy mystery, kind of silly and totally not realistic, but it's just funny. Then I read Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. This book I gave a 4 stars. I was surprised by how much I actually liked this book. This was my very first Elle Kennedy read. I've never read the Off Campus series, so I didn't think I would like Elle Kennedy's writing. I thought it was like cheesy, and it kind of is, but I still really liked it. This book is about a girl named Mac and they live in a place called Avalon Bay, which has a college which is like for super rich kids who just like have their parents' money, and then there's a bunch of like locals. So one of the locals gets in a fight with Mac's current boyfriend and he wants to get back at her boyfriend by like getting her to date him. So I don't know what that trope is called. If you know, please let me know in the comments. I can't seem to think of it, but it was pretty good and I liked it. There's also the second one that I read later on in the year, which you guys will see. Next, I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I gave this book a 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It is about a woman who's just released from prison and she's looking for a job, any job that she can get. And she ends up working as a housemaid in this family's house, and she lives in their attic. And this attic has a lock on the outside of the door. So random. And then it's kind of like creepy mystery. It was so good. It gave a little bit of Verity vibes, but I really like this book. I definitely want to pick up more Frida McFadden books towards the rest of this year, but it was just overall so good. Then I read Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey. This is the second book in the Hot and Hammered series. They're all like interconnected standalones, so you don't have to read them in order, which I didn't because obviously this is the second one and I hadn't read the first one yet. I don't know why I did it this way. I owned all 3 at the time. But this book I gave 4 stars, and again, I would definitely give it like a 2.5 or 3 stars looking back. I think I just get so eager to rate them that I rate them so much higher than I think they're actually worth. I am just not a big Tessa Bailey fan. Her writing is so cheesy to me, and her spicy scenes are so cringy. I gag when I'm reading them. Tessa Bailey's not for me, so personally I would skip on this book, but it was okay. Then I picked up The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. I think at this time it was like almost Valentine's Day, so this was so fitting. This is a YA novel, and it's like Groundhog's Day means Valentine's Day. So our main character wakes up every day on Valentine's Day, and the day is repeating itself, and it was just so funny and wholesome and just so good. I love Lynn Painter, and I gave this a 4 stars. I don't know if I said that. Next, I finally picked up As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. If you don't know, this is the 3rd book in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series, which I feel like so many people have read. It's YA and it's a little mystery series. This book was much darker than the other ones and a little bit creepier than the other 2, but overall it was still good. I gave this book 4 stars and I did enjoy reading it. It was also, you can't tell, but it was chunkier than the rest, but it was a good book. Then I read The Start of Me and You by Emery Lord. I never hear anyone on BookTok, BookTube, Bookstagram, anyone talking about this book, and it was so good. It was another one of those like cutesy YA romances, which I am clearly obsessed with. This book is about Paige, and her very first high school boyfriend passed away in a swimming accident. So she makes a to-do list of like everything that she wants to accomplish her next year in high school because she's ready to rejoin the real world after grieving. And it was just so sweet and wholesome, and it was just such a good book. I recommend this if you like YA books. This one was so good. Then I read Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is another YA mystery book. It's about a girl named Stevie Bell who attends Ellingham Academy, which is a very famous private academy known for people with talents, I guess, and one of Stevie's talents is that she's really good at uncovering mysteries. So there's a super big mystery that happened at the academy several decades ago, and she is trying to solve it because she's not satisfied with the current answer that was given. So this one was super good. It's a big long series. Throughout this half of the year I read some more in this series, but I definitely need to pick it back up. Then I picked up 9 Days and 9 Nights by Katie Cotugno. This book is the sequel to a book called 99 Days. That one I loved and recommend, but this one I gave 3 stars. It was totally not needed. It was very boring and it seemed kind of pointless in my opinion. The first one, loved it. This one, definitely skip. Next was The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This book I gave it 2 stars. It would have been a 1 star, but the ending kind of like bumped it up a little bit. I was so confused during this book and I was so freaking bored. It's about 3 women who are involved with the same guy, kinda. You'll figure out if you read it, but this book was definitely a miss for me and I would not recommend this. I was just confused and bored, which is never fun when you're reading a book. Then I read My Year of Rest and Relaxation. This was the first book of the year that I annotated and I had so much fun doing it. This one I gave 4 stars and it is about a woman who one day just decides that she wants to hibernate. So she takes a bunch of meds and basically just sleeps for a year is her plan. This book, it sounds like it would be so boring, but somehow it was so entertaining at the same time. It was a pretty quick read. It's just about 300 pages, if not less, and the font is big, and it was just funny and entertaining. I really liked this one. Then the next 3 books that I read were To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han, that little series. So To All the Boys I've Loved Before, P.S. I Still Love You, and Always and Forever Lara Jean. Overall, I gave this series a 4 stars. I thought it was just so cute. It's YA, it's romance, and it was just such an easy, fun read. I want to go and read. Nope. I want to go and watch all the movies now, but it was just so cute, and I really enjoyed my time reading this. Next, I read The Vanishing Stare by Maureen Johnson. This is the second book after Truly Devious. I gave this one a 4 stars. It was good. It was interesting and fun. I'm not going to tell you what it's about because obviously it's the second book in a series, but this was a good one. Then I picked up Bad Girl Reputation by Elle Kennedy. This is, again, the second book in the series, the Good Girl Complex. They're interconnected standalones again, so they don't need to be read in order, I don't think. I'd probably recommend it, but right now there's 2 books out. I think the third is actually coming out really soon. This one I gave a 3 stars. I guess I didn't like it as much. This is about, the main boy character in this one has a twin brother. So it's about his twin brother and his romance story. I guess I don't remember it being as interesting as this one, but it was still a pretty good read. It was quick, easy, just about 300 pages, so not too bad. Then I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This book blew up so fast on TikTok, and I gave it a 4.75 stars, but looking back, I feel like there wasn't much of a plot. I don't know, I could be wrong, but to me it didn't feel very plot heavy. It was about Anastasia and Nate. She's a figure skater and he's a hockey player, obviously. Something happens at their college and they have to share a rink, and she is not happy about it. So it's Grumpy Sunshine, but the girl is actually the grumpy one in this book, which I feel like I never read, but it was really good. Then I read After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one I gave a 4.25 stars. It's about a couple who they are married and they feel like they're reaching their breaking point. So they decide to take a year off from each other and have no contact in hopes of fixing things when they come back, which seems a little bit stupid in my opinion. Who does that? But it was interesting. It's another book that sounds like it would be boring, but it ended up being pretty interesting. So I think Taylor Jenkins Reid has some better books, but this one wasn't terrible. Next, I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This book I gave a 4.75 stars. I just didn't love the way Liz, the main girl, treated her friend. But this book is about Liz, and her childhood crush moves back into her neighborhood, and her next door neighbor is friends with her childhood crush. So she recruits her next door neighbor to get his help to get the friend to like her, and she happens to fall in love with the next door neighbor. Kind of fun. So this book I would recommend. It was a cute YA romance. Then I read Loathe to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. This is a collection of 3 novellas. They're all a woman in STEM, obviously, because it is Ali Hazelwood. I gave this book a 3.75 stars. It was good for what it was, but because they're novellas, you can't really fall in love with the characters. So it was alright. Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I didn't really give this book a rating because it is a memoir and that does not feel fair, but I would totally recommend this book. It had such great advice, such good quotes. This is another book that I tabbed, and some of the quotes in here are just so good. The font is huge. It's not very long. This was a great quick read and I am obsessed. This book was so good. Then I read Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I gave this book a 5 stars. It was so good. It's about a couple who met in January, and within a couple months they were married, and then the guy in the marriage dies. It's kind of how she copes with his death after being so in love with him, and how his mom is coping with his death, and how they kind of cope together, because the mom didn't even know they were married. So when she first finds out, she was mad. But the relationships in this book were so heartwarming. I loved this one. Then I read My Son Marshall, My Son Eminem. This is a book written by Eminem's mom. I don't have the dust jacket for this book since I've had it for literally 5 years. But again, I'm not going to give this book a rating because it's someone else's life. That is not fair. But I don't know if I would recommend this book. The writing was very weird. It felt like almost childish in a way. There are pictures, which was kind of fun. Next, we have Miss Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. 5 stars. Easiest 5 stars I've ever given a book. This was so good. And I can understand why some people might not like it because it is such a toxic romance, but if you go into it knowing that, you're gonna be fine. Just know that this is toxic and you're reading it for the drama, not the wholesome relationship, because that is not what this is. This book is about a girl named Magnolia and is basically Gossip Girl in London. So that's really all you need to know. This book was absolutely amazing. Please, please, please pick it up. Next is Roomies by Christina Lauren. This book was a 2 stars. I genuinely did not like this book. It is about a woman named Holland, and she goes to the subway every day just to hear this one guy play guitar. And she ends up getting an arranged marriage with him so that he can stay and work in the States because his visa's expired. It was just boring. Like, I never wanted to pick this book back up again, so pass. And then finally I picked up Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling. This is obviously the last book in the Harry Potter series. This was my first time reading it and it was so good. Like, I'm so glad I finally read this. Obsessed. I gave it 4 stars. The only reason why I didn't give it 5 was because in this book, they're not at Hogwarts, and I loved the vibes of Hogwarts, and I really missed it. So it was a 4 stars, but it was a good 4 stars. Next, I read The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. This was my first Abby Jimenez book ever, and I gave it 5 stars. This was so good. It's about a girl named Kristen, and her best friend is getting married, and she meets the best man, Josh, and they kind of spark up a bit of a romance, but she has a boyfriend who's like serving overseas. Something like that. It was still really good though, and I love this book. Then I read Set on You. This book I gave a 3.5 stars. It is a gym influencer romance. So the main girl is a gym influencer and this guy steals her squat rack and she gets really mad at him and he doesn't understand why. That's what I took from this book. Then I read Something Wilder by Christina Lauren, and again I gave this book a 2 stars, which is so disappointing because they are the author of Love and Other Words, which was my absolute favorite book ever. So having a few misses in a row by them was really upsetting. But this book is about a girl named Lily, and her father's super into treasure hunting, and she does one last treasure hunt in his honor. And it was just very weird and different and not what I was expecting. Then I read Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins. This book I also gave it 2 stars. I couldn't even tell you what it was about. I don't remember. It was boring and not my typical genre. I read this book because my best friend recommended it, but it's not something I would normally pick up. Then I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book I gave a 4.75 stars. It was so good. This book is all about video games and 2 friends making a video game together, which sounds so boring, but please trust me, this book was amazing. If you've read Carrie Soto's Back, it's similar to that where it's about something that's not very interesting, but the author somehow makes it so good. Then I read Mr. Bong Number by Lynn Painter. This book is about Olivia and she is full of bad luck. She sets her apartment building on fire and has to go live with her brother, and her brother is living with his best friend. So it's brother's best friend, and it was so cute and so good. I gave this book a 4.5 stars. Then I read The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This book I gave a 3.5 stars. It's a YA fantasy dystopian novel. It's where the world is divided between people with red blood and people with silver blood. If you have silver blood, you have powers. And Mare, our main character, has both. Or she has red blood but silver powers. Something like that. It was pretty good. I definitely need to pick up the rest in the series. It's like 4 books in the series, I think. So I will continue it because I do own all the books, but I feel like you could get away with not reading this. Then I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This was obviously my second book by her, and I gave it another 5 stars. This book was so good. It's a small town romance if you like that. And basically, she is a super big doctor and her family is very well known, and she's up for a very big promotion. and he lives in a small little town, and his family kind of owns like the inn at the town, and they meet and they both can't leave their respective towns. So like, what are they gonna do? It was so good though. I really like this one. Then I read Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, and I gave this book a 4 stars. It was pretty good. It is a fantasy. It's super easy to digest. It's nothing too complicated. It's about a girl who's part of the Queen's Premier Guard, and she's a thief. And she meets the son of some family who's come to power. I don't really know how to describe it. It was good though, and I think totally read this. Then I read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This book is about a bunch of students who go to a school for the arts, but it's like for theater, and it's very Shakespeare, dark academia, those kind of vibes. It is 7 friends, I think, and one ends up dead, and you're kind of figuring out what happened and what led up to it. It was good. I liked this book. I'd say read it if you're into stuff like that. Then I picked up Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. This is the second to the Magnolia Parks Daisy Hates universe, and this book I gave a 4 stars. I still absolutely loved it. I just didn't read it as fast like I did with Magnolia Parks, so it took just longer to get through. I don't know. It was still really good, and I am obsessed with Christian. My goodness. Next was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I have been meaning to pick this book up for forever. This one I gave a 4.5 stars. If you're unaware, it is a fantasy series. This first one was a Beauty and the Beast kind of retelling, but I don't think the rest of them in the series are retellings. They just kind of build off this, but this book was so good, and I really want to pick up the next one so soon. Next was In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. This book I gave a 4.5 stars. It was so good. Our main character, Danny, is like dating this guy, and she is so into him, and they get engaged, and then she goes to bed and has this dream that she's somewhere else, completely different in 5 years with a different guy, and then she wakes up and she's back with her fiance, and she's like, wow, that felt so real. And then the rest of the book is like leading up to that. It was so good. I read this book so quick, and I really loved it, and it made me feel so weird and so emotional, but it was really good. Okay, we are almost done. Next, I read Flawless by Elsie Silver. This book is a little cowboy romance. It was so cute. I can't wait to read the next in the series. So far, I really like Elsie Silver's writing. This was the first book I've ever read by her, and it blew up so big on TikTok, and I really liked it, and I think it deserves the hype. Then I read The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. This book is about a couple whose husband goes missing, and he leaves a note saying to protect the daughter, and he was involved in some fraudulent stuff, and they're trying to figure out what happened, where he went. It was pretty good. I gave this one a 4 stars. Next, I read Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. This book I gave a 3 stars. This is the 3rd book in the Hot and Hammered series. I don't know, it was kind of boring. I just don't love Tessa Bailey, so I would skip this one. And then the last book that I read for this half of the year was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This book I gave a 4.5 stars. I absolutely adored it, but there's the miscommunication trope in it, and that drives me absolutely nuts. So if it weren't for that, this would totally be a 5 stars, but it's a workplace romance. It is so cute, and I loved it. This was the 2nd book to Part of Your World. It's this girl's best friend, so it was super cute seeing characters from this book again, but definitely pick them up. These are so good. So those are all the books that I've read so far this year. Thank you so much for watching. If you have read any of these and you have similar or different opinions on them, please let me know. I would love to hear what you guys thought of these books, and I'll see you guys so soon in the next one. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, anything you want. It helps me out so much, and I really appreciate it. Bye.